are now commenting. I just stuck with that. Great Lakes trains. Okay, Great Lakes is getting into a fun topic. Who's going to win the election 2024 in the U.S. Do you think? Yeah, I do a lot on the election. I love talking election. We can totally pivot to that for a minute. And if if you just popped in, click like, click subscribe, click the notification bell if you like what you're hearing, so that as I do more pop up lives, you'll hear more. Um, so who I think is going to win the election? I think that Biden is going to win the election, and I'll tell you why. First thing you have to understand is this: 2024 is a rematch of 2020, and Biden won in 2020. So if the exact same people go to the polls and they vote the exact same way that they did last time, we already know the result. Biden's going to have about a little over 300 electoral votes. Trump's going to have a little bit over 230 electoral votes. Biden's going to win. That's just the math. Trump has to win states that he didn't win last time, or he won't win. I do think that Trump is going to win Georgia. I don't think that Trump is going to win Pennsylvania. And so then this whole election is going to boil down to one state, Michigan. And Michigan should get called at around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on election night. If Trump wins Michigan, if Trump wins Georgia and he wins Michigan, game over. He wins the election. He's going to have 270. You got all these other states that have to get called, but basically there are states that always vote conservative, states that always vote liberal. Like, I already know which way Texas is going to vote. I already know which way Montana is going to vote. California, Washington, already know which way they're going to vote. Trump wins Michigan and he's got Georgia, he's got 270. It's over. If Trump doesn't take Georgia, he loses. Don't think that's going to happen. So it's going to boil down to Michigan. And if Trump doesn't take Michigan, he's done. Now, here's why I think Biden's going to win Michigan. And this isn't partisan. This isn't me saying I want one outcome or the other. This is just me analyzing what's happening. Everybody, well, not everybody, people will remember, or not, Joe Biden stood on a picket line for United Auto Workers in Michigan a couple of years back. I didn't understand why he did it at the time. I thought, it's President of the United States. He's got more important things to do than stand on a picket line. Why is he standing on this picket line? He's got people he can send to do that, if he even needs to send people. Now, I'm not saying he didn't agree with their cause at all, but I am saying that he knew that was a great photo op. And I am saying that Biden said, you know what? Michigan, he knew several years ago, Michigan is what this is going to come down to. So he got on that auto worker line, and now here's what the Michigan voters are going to be looking at. You're going to have a group of people who are saying, okay, Trump is telling me what he wants to do to make Michigan better. Got it. But Biden stood next to me on that picket line and helped me improve my working conditions so that I can feed my family. Now, personally, I'm assuming that's going to have more sway than, like, what promise are you going to tell somebody that's going to overcome the other guy standing on a picket line right next to them advocating for them? That's the thing. I think Biden knew how important Michigan was years ago, and he planted those seeds. And so now, if he wins Michigan, he wins. Whoever wins Michigan is basically going to win, because the other swing states generally, for these last two elections, go the same way Michigan does. Wisconsin's going to go the same way. Arizona's going to go the same way. That's it. So that's what I think Trump has to. That's what I think Trump has to overcome if he's going to win. And I just haven't seen what he's pulling out of his hat to win Michigan. People can disagree, but my question is going to be, what do you think Trump is going to do to win Michigan voters when Biden stood on that picket line next to him? That's the question. Yeah. So we've got, I'm happy. Yeah, we can totally pivot. I wish we had better candidates. They're both too old to rule the country. Biden's 81, Trump is 77. They're old. Yikes. I don't want to. Let me see. We got Nate Hamill. Trump, 45 and 47. I'm not saying it's not possible, Nate. I'm just saying I don't see how Trump is going to win Michigan. He might, but he's got to do something amazing to pull Michigan out of the hat, and I haven't seen it yet. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Doesn't mean that, right now he's kind of distracted. He's got the hush money Stormy Daniels case to deal with. But he's got to do something. I think that he's behind in Michigan. You can't trust polls are trash. I don't trust polls. Too easy to manipulate them. But that's what it's going to be. And then we have Great Lakes trains. Good points, my friend. I agree to disagree. We need more of this in our country. Yes, we do. That's part of what I try to do a lot on the election. Honestly, I try to spend more time on the election than not. I was talking about Passport Bros mainly because I did an interview and I wanted to post it, and I was kind of experimenting because I started using this new software. And since I had the interview, I thought, well, let me start putting out some videos about this to see how this software performs. Most of what I talk about is the election. Basuravids, I was never aware about how powerful Michigan is. Not a state I think about very often. See, that's the thing. You can literally, if you map it out, and this is what's so funny about this election. We've basically had this election twice already. We had Trump versus Clinton in 2016. We had Trump versus Biden in 2020. So what we have is we have a very clear map. There are states that voted Clinton, Biden. There are states that voted Trump, Trump. So you can say, look, these states are voting. There's no reason. I don't see any state that voted Trump twice changing their mind. I don't see any state that voted Biden twice changing their mind. So there are only like 6 swing states that matter. And I think Trump's already got Georgia. I don't see how Trump loses Georgia. If he loses, the only way he loses Georgia is if he just fumbles. If he loses Georgia, then it's like, you don't deserve to be president if you lose Georgia, because you should lock that up. I think Biden's going to lock up Pennsylvania. It's not going to be as decisive a victory as Trump's going to get in Georgia, but I think Biden's going to get Pennsylvania. However, Michigan, because it's not so much about I forget, what's Michigan, like 16 electoral votes, something like that. Michigan is going to be you're literally going to be looking at these two guys who are close to 270. And Michigan is basically going to be what decides if Trump gets over 270, because if he gets it, he's there. Or it's going to decide that he's not going to get to 270, because if he doesn't hit that, he's not going to hit the other. So he will literally just kind of be sitting on, 200 and, well, let me not say. There are some things that are hard to predict. Some states divide up their electoral votes. Let's say he'll be hovering a little bit below 270 and trying to figure out how to pick up a big state. But none of the other swing states are going to be as big as Michigan. Very diverse everywhere you go. Nate Hamill, check your savings from 2019. I'm assuming you mean compared to now. Here's a funny thing, Nate, about the economy and how people are. Trump has been better for in general. This is a generalization. Trump has been better for small towns. Biden has been better for big cities. And when you look at the way they vote, like if you look at, I did a map where I showed the way Pennsylvania voted. And it was funny. Most of Pennsylvania voted Trump, if you just look at the area on the map. But the big cities voted Biden. And the big cities had, if you add up the total number of people in the big cities versus the total number of people in the small towns, there were more people in the big cities. And that's what the tip of the iceberg was. If you talk to people about who was better for their individual income, a lot of people in the small towns say Trump. But a lot of people in the big cities say Biden. And it's just, there are very different philosophies. So both make sense. Here's something to keep in mind if we just talk about the economy in general. Trump was good for the economy. Biden was good for the economy. In general, that doesn't mean he was good for you as an individual, but if you look at the economy as a whole, they both were good for the economy, just in different ways. The economy is funny because we got to remember that when George W. Bush Jr. was in office, we were in a recession. Housing market collapsed. People were being laid off in waves. The economy was in the toilet. The economy got better under Obama, and then it got better under Trump, and it took a hit because of COVID. So Trump was trending along, doing a great job. COVID hit, and the economy went into the toilet again. I'm not blaming COVID on Trump. I'm just stating the fact. COVID hit, economy went back into the toilet. We got back out of that. Then you see under Biden, the economy's doing better again. It was this kind of very straight trend line of the economy just getting progressively better. And if it wasn't for COVID, people, I don't think Trump would have lost. Well, I don't think Trump would have lost 2020 if it wasn't for COVID. I don't think he would have lost if it wasn't for COVID, and I don't think he would have lost if he told voters to vote by mail. Because remember, Trump told people to show up at the polls. He wanted the big red wave. He lost 3 swing states by like just a couple of votes. He was saying, "Hey, I'm looking for 27,000 votes in states that have like 4 million people." Could he have gotten 27,000 votes if he just said vote by mail? Yeah, he could have. I think that's what bothered him the most, is knowing, oh shoot, I lost this election by just a couple of votes. But that's the stuff that can make or break an election. And they're saying way too much inflation though now. Yeah. So here's how inflation works though. If costs go up, and this is why I say big cities versus small towns. If my income stays constant and the costs go up, you know what? Inflation's hitting me in the pocket. If my income goes up and costs go up, well, okay, people are complaining about inflation, but I'm looking and saying, is my situation bad? Like, personally, I feel like my situation is better, so I'm not complaining about inflation. That's why I say big cities versus small towns. It's two very different things, and that's what the election is boiling down to: is who's got more support? The guy who's representing benefits for the small towns, or the guy who's representing benefits for the big cities? And I don't know, but I do know this: Trump has to convert some people, because if the election, this is a rematch of 2020. So if everybody votes the same way they did in 2020, we're going to have the same result. I'm just happy to have a conversation without people getting. Yes, exactly, Nate. That's why. What I try to do is I try to create a place where everybody can talk. I don't want people hating each other. I've got friends who are Republicans. I've got friends who are Democrats, and we can all talk, because we can agree to disagree on some things. We can agree to see other people's points of view. If I look at my friends who are Republicans, I look at my friends who are Democrats, what I can say about them is they are all voting for their personal bank account. And for some people, Trump's better, and for others, Biden is better. And I don't fault anybody for who they vote for. I just want to make sure people vote. So Biden-Trump is going to be interesting, and I cannot wait. I'm going to be streaming on election night, and I am going to be very focused on 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because that's when Michigan should get called. Or that's when we at least get our first insight into what's going on with Michigan. And I'm telling you right now, I'm going to be looking at that, and I'm going to be saying, here's who's winning the election. Because everything else should fall into place. I mean, Trump should win Georgia. Biden should win Pennsylvania. All the other states are going to basically vote the way they always have. And we're going to be looking at Michigan and saying, who's the president? So that will be a very interesting point in the night. Before we move on, click like and click subscribe if you haven't and you're interested in the content. Part of what I will say, I did videos about Biden and Trump. And I asked specific questions because I wanted to trigger people. So I said, tell me what you hate about Biden. That was a video. And then I did another video. Tell me what you hate about Trump. And I just wanted to see what people had to say. Funny thing is, when I asked people what they hated about Biden, they talked about policies. They didn't like the open borders. They didn't like his energy approach. they didn't feel like Biden's policies were America first. That was fundamentally what people said they didn't like about Biden. When I asked people what they hated about Trump, they talked about his character. It was always he's got sexual misconduct allegations, January 6th, failed business deals. Those were the things that they had a problem with about Trump. And it was interesting to me that policy didn't really factor into how they thought about who they were voting for. It was just, I don't like the way this guy carries himself, so I'm not voting for him. That's basically why people said they're not voting for Trump. Occasionally, people would throw a couple of policy things in, but I would say 90% of what they said was his character. Whereas for Biden, it was honestly one of the biggest reasons people are voting for Biden is because they don't want to vote for Trump. It wasn't so much what Biden was doing, it's what they didn't like about Trump that caused them to say, well, I'm voting for Biden. Trump is the story of the election. You're voting for him or you're voting against him. That's generally my take on what's going on. And Nate's saying, hey, policy for me. Yep, I get it. It's a little nervous when somebody's voting against someone and they don't understand the policies they're voting for. That's a little weird. It's what people are doing. It is a little weird, but that, it is what it is. The one thing I will say, though, is these are the things that people said about Trump that I found interesting. One person said, if his vice president's not going to endorse him, then how can I vote for him? And I did think that was interesting because Mike Pence, I don't know why he did it, but Mike Pence came out and he publicly said he wasn't going to vote for Trump. Now, Mike Pence also said he wasn't going to vote for Biden. So it's like, well, wait a minute. If you're not voting for Biden and you're not voting for Trump, who the hell are you voting for? That doesn't make any sense. But that was his position. He's like, you know what, I'm not voting for Trump. So if people are saying, I'm not voting, if you can't get your vice president to back you, I'm not going to back you. I'm not going to argue with them on that. And there was one other guy, like Mitt Romney, I think it was. He did an interview, and it was weird because he said basically what America was saying. He said that when it comes down to domestic policy, Trump's got better domestic policy. He said Biden has better foreign policy, and he spun he knows the foreign policy better than I do, but he spun it in a way that was interesting. He basically admitted that funding the Ukraine war, supporting the Ukraine war was throwing money in a hole. Like, they're not going to win, and none of the money that we're sending is going to change that outcome. But he said we made a commitment to provide a certain level of funding. And on the world stage, from an influence standpoint, if you say you're going to provide a certain level of funding and you don't, then you lose your credibility. Now, to him, that was a huge misstep if you didn't follow through on the funding that you said you were going to support. That was his problem with Trump's foreign policy. That was kind of interesting to me because it was the first time I heard somebody say, look, throwing money at Ukraine is just wasted. But he explained why he thought that way. And for him, he said that he was voting on character. He admitted it. He said, look, I look at the character of the president. Again, it was weird that he was speaking against Trump because he's a Republican. If I was a Republican and I wasn't going to vote Trump, or if I was a Democrat and I wasn't going to vote Biden, I wouldn't blast that out there. That doesn't help my cause. I was surprised that they were blasting it out because it affects people, because people came back in the comments and said, if this guy's not backing Trump, I'm not going to support him. That was the one thing that I don't see any of Biden's close people disavowing themselves and saying, I won't vote for Biden. They might not be voting for him, but nobody's coming out and making a big deal about it. But then on the counter side, the thing that I heard about Biden that someone said that I thought was interesting got into age. Biden's 81, Trump's 77. They're both old. Biden, they're close in age, but they're not close in vigor, let's say. Biden carries himself a little older, a little slower than Trump. Trump seems kind of energetic. more so than Biden. More so, I think at 81, Trump is going to be a more active person than Biden is. Now, one person had a comment about Biden and said they weren't confident that Biden would survive a 4-year term. I thought that's an interesting take because that led them to say, who's going to be better as vice president? Now, they were saying, would Kamala Harris be a great president? I can't say she would or wouldn't. I don't really follow her that much. I don't think that she's done as well in the PR front as people would have expected. But I don't know what she's doing behind the scenes with operations. She might be phenomenal at operations. I don't see that. The PR around her doesn't seem to be great. I don't have like the warm and fuzzies with her that I've had for some other presidents. George W. Bush had great warm and fuzzies. So I thought that it was very interesting that they were saying, this whole Kamala Harris thing is a problem, and that was their issue with Biden. They didn't think he was actually going to be the man to do the job, and so they couldn't vote for what they felt like was going to be a Kamala Harris presidency because they didn't think that she was the right person. That was an interesting take. And that's part of what I love about doing this is you get some of these interesting takes where people just come in and you're like, I didn't think about that. That's interesting. Oh yeah, let me again remind people, click like, click subscribe if you like what you're hearing, click the notification bell. So when I do my pop-up lives, you'll be notified since it's just going to be a quick pop-up. Let me see. I don't care personally how things are said, but just what is said. Yeah, and I get that. Nate, I totally hear you on that. I just have to acknowledge that there are a lot of people who don't think that way. There was a guy in the comments section. It was funny because he asked me why I was even bothering to ask the question. He was like, Trump 2024, why are you even asking this question? It's stupid. And I just said to him, read the comment section. Look at what people are saying. Half the people think like you do, and half the people think differently than you. And he came back and he said, okay, I've read the comments. It's actually kind of depressing now that I've read the comment section to see so many people who don't understand. But my point was, not everybody's in your situation. Some people are going to look at the world the way you do. Some are going to look at it differently. And that's why some people are voting Trump and some people are voting Biden. Nate said he agrees that the Ukraine is a waste. Yeah, it seems to be, they've said it's a waste of money. But it's kind of like credibility. It's sort of like, if you owe somebody a debt, even though they're about to move away, like, are you the person who pays that debt because you owe it? Or are you the person who says, well, they're going to move, so if I just duck them for like a week, I won't have to pay this? He was positioning it kind of like, look, I owe this debt, so I'm going to pay it. Otherwise, the next time somebody says somebody brings something up, if I say, hey, I'll pay you, they're going to go back and say, nah, you promised to pay these guys and you didn't, so I don't really trust you. You've lost a little bit of reputation. That was his point. Hedro Storm, what have the Democrats ever done to expect the black vote? That's an interesting question, Hedro. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of things here because that is a very interesting question. My true story. I grew up in, I mentioned earlier in the stream, I grew up in Texas. Very true story for me. I'll talk about my personal experience. When I grew up, I thought that all black people voted Democrat. Like when I was a little kid, that was my mindset. Every black person I knew voted Democrat. The only people who I knew who were black and didn't vote Democrat when I was a little kid were rich, or they were like troublemakers. They were the kind of people who, anytime there was an event, they were the person who was starting trouble, who was always arguing a different point of view just to be difficult. Those are the only two types of people who I expected to see vote Republican as a little kid. I had never stopped, it was like I was in my teen years before I even thought about the Republican Party. It was just, it just wasn't what we did. But as I got a little older, I started thinking more about policy and kind of predicament. I said, well, wait a minute. Let me stop just defaulting to Democrat on every single ticket for every single issue. It's like, who's actually better for me? And like, I stopped and I thought about it. But for a lot of people, they grew up in a world where, oh, if you're black, you vote Democrat. They don't think about it. It's just a reflex. Like, this is what I do. What's funny is if you look at the sentiment for Trump right now, I would say Trump's got more black support now than anybody has had since like Colin Powell. Admittedly, Colin didn't run for president, but there was a lot of enthusiasm around, ooh, is Colin going to run for president? Because if he ran for, if Colin Powell ran for president, he would have got a lot of the black people who said, I vote Democrat, would have voted Republican to say, wait, I want to see what the nation looks like if there's a black president. Like, to be able to check that box and say, I was there when the first black president was elected, yeah, he would have gotten the black vote. There are a lot of Trump supporters in the black community for a lot of reasons. Now, some of them are getting into policy and saying, hey, I've looked at Trump's policies. I think Trump's policies are the best policies for America. I'm voting for him. Some are voting for Trump because they're disappointed in 4 years of Biden. They're saying, you know what? I want to see what Trump can do. I think Trump's going to do more for the country than Biden has, and I'm going to give him my vote. I don't want 4 more years of this. So I don't think that the black vote is as democratic this time around as it was last time. And I also don't think that Democrats can just count on a black vote over and over and over at elections moving forward, because especially with the explosion of social media, more people are talking about issues and more people are starting to say, is this really the candidate who I want? I don't know if this Democrat is the candidate who I want or not. So we'll see. I think most black people are going to vote Democrat, but if you do the percentage, making this up, if it was 95% Democrat last time, it might be down at like 90 or 85% this time. The woman I was talking about earlier, Sheila, who I did the interview with, at the beginning of the long video, she comes out and says she's a Trump supporter. She doesn't get into her reasons, but she was very clear. She supports Trump. And you can look at her comments on a lot of videos and you'll see she advocates really strongly for Trump. Let me see. We have Shadows West saying neither Dems nor Republicans. Okay. So is that tell me you're voting. If you're not voting, then I'm encouraging you to vote. If you're voting independent, I don't advocate for independent because the independent's not going to win, but I do advocate for voting. Voting independent is better than just sitting on the couch and not voting at all. Let me see. Love Miss Maya says, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area of California. I spent 2 years in San Francisco. And literally, I remember being a kid and the man walked up to me and told me that I better vote for Clinton because I'm black. Yeah, see, that's, all right, true story. Had a sister-in-law. They're divorced now. She voted for Trump. In 2016, what was that? Yeah, she voted for Trump 2016. And there was a big discussion with a lot of family members because they were shocked. They were saying, wait, what do you mean you're voting for Trump? You're black. You got to vote for that time it was Clinton. She's like, nope, I think Trump's got the best policies for America. So already we're starting to see it. I mean, the Democratic hold on the black vote is weakening, and yeah, they're going to have to if their strategy for winning is to count on, black voters to get them over some humps in some states, that's not going to be the stronghold that it used to be for them. They're going to have to think about that. Would I like to see a younger, I'm assuming you mean a younger president. Yeah. 77, Biden is the oldest president in history. It's a fact. Now, we're living longer, so if you look at the way it works, like as we've progressed along, the presidents have gotten older. That's just the timeline. We're going to eventually have. I mean, one day we're going to have a 90-year-old president. It'll eventually happen. We're living longer. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I mean, let's face it. If Biden wins, he'll be 85 when he comes out of office. So is it really that hard to conceive of a president who's in office at 90? Not really. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen right now, but that's possible. I would love to see. I would love to see younger guys. I would love to see the energy that they can bring. I'm not one of the, like, I don't want a 40-year-old president. That's just me. I don't think you've been around long enough. I want an old dog who's seen enough, knows enough. But I don't need you to be 70. I mean, if you're 50, hey, great. Works for me. I don't remember how old Clinton was when he did his first term. Actually, I'm going to look that up because now I'm curious. How old was Bill Clinton when he first became president? 40. Oh, so Bill Clinton was 46. Okay. He had that youthful energy when he came in. He went on Arsenio Hall show and played the saxophone, which was weird. I was a kid. I thought, wait a minute, president's playing the saxophone. The president is cool. That changed my perception of the president. I always thought of the president as being stuffy and formal. But as a little kid, I'm like, oh wow, this president's cool. I like this guy. You don't need much to impress a kid. So yeah, I like the fact that younger presidents can bring an energy and an enthusiasm that some of the older presidents, just can't. Let me see. Great Lakes is going independent. Okay. So you're going like RFK Jr.? RFK Jr. is not going to win. The only way RFK Jr. wins is if somehow Trump doesn't get to run and it's Biden versus RFK Jr. I don't see that happening because I think it's Biden versus Trump. Then maybe RFK Jr. Maybe. That's the only way I could see it happening, though. Candidate take over the main Democratic or Republican candidate. Let me see. Let me see. An independent. So yeah, independent. RFK Jr. could kind of take over the Republican space if somehow Trump is not able to run. I think that's why he's still kind of hanging around, is he's hoping that like these legal cases cost Trump the Republican nomination, and then he can take it. That's what I think he's doing. But kind of a waste. I get it. I think it's a waste of time. Trump is going to be the Republican candidate, and we just have to move on, accepting that. Mr. Data. Hey, welcome, Mr. Data. I'm a centralist. Politics has gone too far, brother. What do you think? Politics has gone too far. Yeah. I think that partisan politics has screwed things up. I think that politicians should be advocating for America. But whatever, politicians have started advocating for their parties. Take a look at Congress. How many shutdowns do we have? How many times do we get right to the edge of a shutdown and then suddenly we refund things? And it's not because there's a real issue. It's just because one side doesn't want to approve another side's bill. Not even because they don't agree with the bill. It's just the other side came up with it. We've gotten to the point where it feels like the parties hate each other. Like you can't have a conversation with somebody who's from the other party because it turns into a fight. It turns into this loud screaming match. And it's not supposed to be that. We're supposed to be able to talk about, whether funding companies so that they pass the income down to their employees is a better way to help America than lowering costs so that employees can buy more stuff. Like the pros and cons of those sorts of things are supposed to be what we do. But things have become so partisan that you can't even have the conversation. Here's a funny thing that if you don't know what Chat GPT is, I'll encourage you to take a look. If you've heard about like college kids being able to use software to write their essays for them, That's one of the things ChatGPT can do. ChatGPT, though, it's a great answers tool. You go ChatGPT, you start plugging questions in, it spits out answers. It's better than Google for a lot of things because Google sends you to websites and says, look at these. ChatGPT says, forget all that. Here's the answer to your question. I went to ChatGPT and I wanted to know, like, I was looking at climate change. And I basically asked ChatGPT because I was going to do a video on this. I said, tell me all the reasons why people should be for climate change. Tell me all the reasons why people should be against climate change. Like, I just wanted to have a map of the good and the bad so I could look at it for myself and, draw my own conclusions. ChatGPT is woke. It told literally, this is a software tool that's supposed to give me an answer. It told me why climate change is real, and it said it cannot take a conversation about climate change being fictitious. It can't take that seriously. It will not give me answers for why I should argue that climate change is baloney. And I thought, wait a minute. This tool's not supposed to do this. It's not supposed to have an opinion. It's just supposed to be, it's supposed to be a typewriter. Like, spit out the lines. Tell me the answer to my question. That's what I'm here for. It's opinionated. That tells me that somebody who was programming ChatGPT was liberal and wanted ChatGPT to be liberal. That's how politics have gotten so out of whack. We can't look at things objectively anymore. Everybody's looking at things through a conservative or a liberal lens. And sometimes that's the wrong way to do it. Sometimes you got to look at the whole thing. You got to look at both sides. But it's becoming very hard for us to see anything except our own point of view. So, yeah, that was a long-winded, yes, I agree. Politics have taken things off the rails. I got to take a sip because that answer dried me out. All right. For everybody who's joined, click like, click subscribe. If you want to be notified when I do my pop-up lives, I don't always do them at the same scheduled time, so it can be random. But if you like what you're hearing and you want to hear more, that's the way to do it. Let me see. Centrist politics have gone too far. Yep. Okay, so we just covered that. One who cares. Greetings. Welcome back. Glad to see you. Love Miss Maya. Bill Clinton was sexy. You better be careful with that. Let's not forget. All right. This is a bad joke. There's no language in it, but somebody made this joke. I remember when I heard this, I was on a plane, and I was going to a business meeting, so I was professional. I was trying to be all professional. This guy said to another guy on the plane, "What did Monica Lewinsky find in her pocket?" He's like, "What?" He said, "A wad of bills." And I stopped and I thought about it and I was like, that was kind of funny. Okay, I can't like walk around with this, but that was a good joke. It's like, wait a minute, a wad of bills. Like that's a goofy, depraved, like, your play on words. But yeah, kind of the funny thing there is, love Miss Maya, you think Bill Clinton is sexy? Be careful, because Bill Clinton's got a roaming eye. Oh man, there's a movie. John Travolta played. They didn't call him Bill Clinton, but he was basically Bill Clinton. I don't remember who else was in it. It was so funny because John Travolta as the president was just a playboy. He was sleeping with everybody. And the whole thing, there was this big controversy in the movie because he had this babysitter who he was being accused of having gotten pregnant. He was trying to figure out how to handle it. And he couldn't deny that he slept with her because he wanted to get a paternity test. I was like, well, wait a minute. The only reason to get a paternity test is because you did sleep with her. That means you were sleeping with the babysitter. So it's an excellent movie. It was really funny because you're looking at this president, he's standing on the stage and doing all this stuff. But he's just like a dirty dog. He's out there having his fun. He's joking around with his whole staff, basically telling them to sleep around. He doesn't want them coming into the office horny. So, yes, Bill Clinton, he had an appeal. He had a charm. Now, one of the things I'm curious about, I'm going to do this video I got to figure out when to launch it. I want to know if people who could go, if you could go back to 2020, would you still vote for who you voted for? So if you voted for Biden, would you still do it? If you voted for Trump, would you still do it? I really want to know from independents who are in swing states, because let's face it, if you were an independent in like Pennsylvania or Georgia, you can see like if the independents voted one way or voted the other, that would have decided the election. Independents in Pennsylvania could have decided the election. Georgia, I'd have to count up the votes, but literally, this was who's got more support, and it came down to such razor thin margins that it would have been interesting to see if people change their minds going back. And the reason that question is so important is because, well, for 2024, it's a rematch of 2020. So if we see people saying that if they could go back, they would change their vote, and then you got to say, well, what would you change? Would you change from Trump to Biden or Biden to Trump? If they're saying they would change from Biden to Trump, Trump's going to win. If they're saying they would change from Trump to Biden, Biden is going to win. It's pretty much that simple. But if everybody votes the exact same way they did last time, same result, Biden will win because if nobody changes, we've seen this exact election already. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I am curious. I get the sense, though, I think that Trump is getting more support, but I don't think he's getting it in the states that matter. Like, I think that Trump will get better turnout in a lot of the states that he's already locked up. So he might get more votes, but if he's getting them he can get 1 million more votes in Texas, doesn't change how many electoral votes he wins. He can get 1 million more votes in Florida, doesn't change an outcome. He's got to get votes in swing states. He's got to convert some states. And that's the piece I don't know. That's why I'm curious to know if people are planning on changing their mind. I'm actually probably going to drop that video in the next, maybe I'll drop that tomorrow. Because now I really want, well, we'll see. That one's coming soon. So if you see it, please respond and let me know what state you're in, because that's going to be a fun one. Love Miss Maya. LOL. He was sexy back in the 90s. Love Miss Maya would mess around and be the next Bill Clinton flirt. Bill Clinton is a player. He's out there having fun. So it sounds like Love Miss Maya might end up with some stories about her and bad old Bill. Who knows? We will see. One of the things that's funny about Trump is Trump's PR. I think Trump's PR is much better than Biden's PR. It's kind of funny. Trump can take a story and he can turn it into a positive. Biden can take things that should be a positive and he'll just fumble them. I mean, Trump's PR team is top notch. One of the things I talk about is like this whole, like, we'll use an example here, but like energy. Trump has made a very big deal about like the energy plan and how Trump is pro-U.S. energy and Biden is anti-U.S. energy. I don't think Biden's anti-U.S. energy. He doesn't know how to explain his story. Now with Trump would encourage more drilling. And if he encourages more drilling, that means more U.S. jobs. And who's going to argue with that? I understand the appeal of more U.S. jobs. I like having more U.S. jobs, especially if they pay well. But here's the funny thing. If you look at the biggest oil producers in the world, and I looked this up so I know, Saudi Arabia is not the biggest oil producer in the world. That's what I would have thought before I looked it up. United States is the biggest producer of oil in the world. That shocked me, but I went and looked at the numbers. You can Google that in 20 seconds. And the funny thing is, if you keep drilling into it, we've got 5 years of oil reserves of like they get oil and then they like have to prove it to figure out, okay, how do we process this stuff? So oil reserves where it's processed, it's efficient, the whole thing. We've got 5 years of reserves on hand right now. We've got untested reserves, which means we might even have more, if they go through the process and figure out like how to process it efficiently, we could have 10 years of oil reserves on hand right now. Now, what does that mean? Well, from a drilling standpoint, it means drilling right now isn't urgent. It's beneficial, but it's not urgent. And that's why I talk about the PR, because Trump takes a story like that and he knows how to explain it so that he gets people to rally behind him. It's like American jobs. We need energy. Why wouldn't we do this and help pay Americans better salaries? And everybody can get their head around that. Biden goes these weird directions. He wants to be in the Paris Accord, wants to talk about climate change. It's not a good look to be drilling more when you're suddenly going into conversations about climate change. It's like, okay, what does that have to do with the American people? Like, you have to find a way to tie a story to how it benefits the American people. And that's just where I don't see that happening out of his camp. And I don't understand why they haven't been able to get their heads around this. I think that his immigration approach has not been sold well. I mean, Trump spends immigration, he spends it easily. Let's limit immigration. Let's have stronger borders. We don't want, and he's right. I don't want to see stories on the news about somebody getting shot by I don't want to see stories on the news about somebody getting shot. But I definitely don't want to see stories on the news about somebody getting shot by an immigrant who was just let in. Nobody likes to see the stories of Americans struggling to pay their bills and people who are newly immigrated coming in and having better room and board than regular Americans. It's like, wait, who are my tax dollars helping? So Trump spins the story in a very easy way for people to understand. Biden never, like, if Biden got into some of the issues, because let's face it, he's letting people in. Make no mistake about it. If you look at our laws on immigration are the same as a lot of other countries' laws. It's not a question of the laws, it's the enforcement. We're not enforcing them. We're letting people in. But he doesn't get into the reasons why. First off, half the immigration coming in is legal, so there's not as much illegal immigration as people might think because he never takes the time to explain that. But then a lot of it is, hey, we've got jobs that people don't want, but that we need to put employees in. People don't want to work long hours at a chicken ranch for minimum wage, but the immigrants will. People don't want to work at some of these crummy jobs for small contractors that don't pay much, but the immigrants will, and we need those jobs filled. He also doesn't get into Social Security. It's like, look, we need to put money into Social Security. Social Security is only set to last for like 20 years. Sure, we can fund it more, down the road, but we've only got 20 years of it. When immigrants come in, illegal immigrants, and they work and their employer is taxed, that means dollars go into Social Security, but they don't get a benefit, so the dollars aren't going out to them. So it's a way to start putting some money into Social Security. He doesn't talk about that. And that's on him. I mean, the story is there. We just talked about it. He could explain, look, this is why we're doing what we're doing. But he doesn't. Trump's PR is excellent. I don't know why Biden hasn't figured that part out yet, but he hasn't. So, he's going to have to live with that. And if Biden loses the election, immigration is going to be what costs him. Because that is the thing that people consistently cite as one of the issues they have with him. His approach to the borders. People do not agree. It's easy to understand why. And I don't really see him working to fix it. However, he is trying to get those swing voters in Michigan, so he might just be playing, he's just playing for the checkmate. He knows if he wins Michigan, he wins the election. So he might not care about all the rest. He's like, I don't care. Michigan. That is my singular focus, because that is going to make or break my run this year. Man, we got a comment in. Bother Me None. Welcome, Bother Me None. U.S. Drug Control Agency will move to reclassify marijuana in a histo. It's stupid to cook bread at 350 degrees for 55 minutes when you can just do the math and cook it at 19,250 degrees for 1 minute. Now, okay, let's get away from the bread comment, because technically, like that doesn't work. I did that as a kid. I looked at a recipe. It's like, oh, cook this at 300 degrees for 30 minutes. It's like, well, what if I cook it at 600 degrees for 15 minutes? Doesn't that cook it faster? Like, nope. Burns the outside, doesn't cook the inside. So you don't get the textures that you're looking for. But there's a point here. We have to take a step back and we have to look at kind of the war on drugs practically. We spend a lot of money in the war on drugs incarcerating people for what are or processing what's essentially misdemeanors. So not getting into whether you should, if you're pro drugs, anti drugs, not getting into that, just getting into how much time is spent processing and chasing down things that are misdemeanors. Now, for me, look, I believe in a strong stance on things. I don't care how few grams of crack you've got, how few grams of heroin you've got. You get caught with that stuff, you go to jail. Hey, you shouldn't have been messing with it. But I do understand the standpoint. Somebody had a couple of joints on them, and they're not going to get anything more than a slap on the wrist. So why are we tying up a lot of resources chasing those types of things down? It's like, yeah, okay, I understand the story there. I wouldn't argue that that's a waste of effort. How quickly we're not going to become Amsterdam, but we do have to think about what we've exposed ourselves to, because we've opened the door a little bit. We said, well, marijuana is going to be legal. So then if marijuana is legal, well, what's the next thing that people start to look at? And you say, well, marijuana is legal. Why don't we legalize this next thing? And then how are we going to decide where to draw the line? I'm curious. It's easy to say draw it at marijuana, but that's like right now, where marijuana is not legal everywhere. When it is legal everywhere, then what do we do? I'm kind of curious about that. But I need a sip. So as we're doing that, if you're new to the stream, click like, click subscribe, and click the notification bell, because I do pop-up lives periodically. I don't do them on a set schedule. So if you want to participate and you got the notification bell going, you will be set. However, back to the election, which I am comfortable with how the conversation has shifted, because I talk election more than I probably talk about the election more than I talk about anything, because it's an election year and this is going to affect America. I do think it's funny how politics have kind of left the hands of people. What I mean is, once upon a time, I kind of felt like the American people were going to get to decide who they wanted to have as president. Now it feels like the machine is trying to take the decision about who's going to be president out of the hands of the American people. And I don't agree with that. I don't like how states are trying to figure out whether they can take candidates off the ballot or not. I don't think that's right. And that's, we've had the same processes in place for decades, but for some reason now we want to figure out, can I take Trump off the ballot? Can I take Biden off the ballot? That shouldn't be happening. All of these legal cases that Trump is facing, it's no coincidence that he's facing them right now when they impact his ability to campaign. I understand. Well, this is my hypothesis. Personally, I think that this is payback, because I think that when Trump refused to say Biden won, I think that some people said, you know what? I'm going to get you for this. And he didn't have to say he lost, but at some point it was clear, like, okay, Biden's going to be president. So if Trump had said, look, I don't agree with the way the election was run. I got questions, but in the interest of the country, I want everybody to acknowledge that, Joe Biden is going to be the next president. He didn't have to say he lost, but he could have said something that facilitated more of a peaceful transition of power. He chose not to. And I think that there were people who said, you're going to pay for this. I am going to make sure that when I get the chance to kick you when you're down, I'm going to do it. And I think that's a lot of what he's dealing with now with these cases. It's just people who are saying, now is the time where I can hit you and it hurts. And so that's what I'm going to do. Let's face it, he's the only president who didn't increase his revenue coming out of his term. You know, if you look at, I went back to, how far did I go back? I think I went back as far as Reagan. But if you look at every president, they came into office, they left office, they were a whole lot richer when they left office than when they went in. In particular, Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton made a lot of money as president. It's embarrassing how rich he got as president. But every president has done it except Trump. Now that's not, I don't think Trump wouldn't have done it if he had the chance. It's just Trump has had to face a lot of legal issues. He's had a lot of legal battles going all the way back to just before he was running. You know, he was keeping people quiet because he had a lot of issues he had to deal with. So he is in this unique position where he's got the whole machine kind of attacking him and trying to keep him from basically running. That I disagree with. I want to see election night, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and the American people saying, this is who we want as president. And whoever the American people pick, that's who it is. And we run the election. It's clean, it's fair, and the results speak for themselves. That's the way it's supposed to work. It's just that's not the way it's working these days because the politicians have gotten their hands too far into the process, and now things just get weird. So hopefully we can get past all of this. I don't know how many cases Trump has. He's got this. He's got the classified documents. He's got like 2 or 3 more cases he's going to have to deal with. And I think they're going to just hit him with them sequentially. So, this is going to be the long, messy process for him to deal with. And we're going to have to see what happens. Financially, I think he'll be okay. Sure, he's got to pay out a lot. I mean, Trump was worth he was worth $3 billion. Now, he's had to pay out on these cases. He had to pay out like $500 million and $600 million. Okay, that's not small change to anybody. I don't care who you are. $600 million. Don't know what he's going to have to pay out on Stormy Daniels, but what he's got going for him is he just launched Truth Social, his social media platform. Now, he can't sell the shares yet. They went IPO. His stake in that is worth like $3 billion. Now, I don't know where it's going to end up. I don't think it's going to end up there. When you IPO, you get your stock takes off, but then, the market overcorrects and finally it kind of steadies out. So he might only get $2 billion if he decides to sell it all. That's still a big chunk of change. Moral of the story is these legal cases are not going to ruin Trump. He's not going to be broke when he's done. He's got plenty of money. But they are taking time away from other things he could be doing. That's really the impact of this, is it keeps him distracted. It also keeps him in the news, though. So where is it going to go? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. And maybe down the road we'll be saying, you know what? Trump beat all these cases. He didn't really pay out that much. And that's just going to bolster his support because a lot of people like the fact that Donald Trump is treated as kind of like the bad guy in the movie. And he keeps overcoming. And it's like, this is why we like him. He keeps overcoming. Democrats kind of shoot themselves in the foot sometimes with their strategy. I am curious to know, I guess, who's going to be voting by mail this time versus who's going to be voting live. Mail helped Biden big time in 2020. They both saw a surge in their votes. Both, like when Trump and Hillary ran, they both had about 65 million votes. Last election, Trump got up to 75 million. Biden got up to close to 80 million. And a big part of that was because he had mail in votes. Mail in voting overwhelmingly favored Biden, but he's the one who told his constituents to vote by mail. So that's not really a surprise. Like he said, vote by mail. Trump said, go to the polls. I expect more mail in votes. Biden won't have that advantage this time. And the other thing, though, I think it's small, is this whole silly TikTok nonsense. Don't know why Biden is voting to ban. Well, I know why Biden is saying that he's voting to ban TikTok or force a sale. I don't know why he's really doing it. Personally, I think Trump has a better position on that because Trump is saying he likes the social media platform. Now he's got a conflict of interest because he owns a social media platform, so it's hard to take him at face value when he's saying this. But basically, banning TikTok isn't going to do anything for national security. Okay. Most of the social media platforms that exist, the big ones, are owned by America. TikTok's the only one that's not. But let's face it, if we're talking about somebody using an app to spy on you, well, guess what? Most people have like 100 apps on their phone. And most people don't check the terms of service when they sign up for new apps. So you don't know what you're signing up for. And there are apps that will check your contacts, use your phone, use your microphone, use your camera. Apps will do all sorts of things. And people just click and give it access. TikTok's not doing anything special. And if we're really worried about China, well, guess what? Those Apple phones people are walking around with were made in China. The Lenovo phones people are walking around with are made in China. So why are we worried about the software on the app? Well, we're not worried about the software on the phones themselves. I mean, granted, Apple is not a Chinese company, but the moral of the story is made in China, software made in China. If they want to build spyware into something, well, they got plenty of opportunities to do it, plenty of other ways. And banning TikTok isn't going to solve anybody's problems. We've just turned it into this weird political talking point that's ineffective. TikTok's not going to just sit around. They're going to sue, countersue. And so we're talking at least 5 years before this can come to resolution, which means if Biden, focuses on this won't come to resolution before he's out of office. If Trump wins the election, he's just going to kill this issue right off the bat. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to pursue this. It's like, what are we trying to go after? Because there are a million reasons why this will not work. And there's only like one or two reasons why it would. But even there, you have to say, well, why bother? That's my take on it. You guys might be in different camps on that. But we'll see. Anyway, it is like a little after 9:15. And I am going to call it a night because I have a big day ahead of me tomorrow. I'll be back. Click like, click subscribe, click the notification bell so that you can be here when I'm back on for live streams. Feel free to drop a comment. And other than that, the last good man in Jersey, signing out.